while I am a plan ahead guy, almost everything I've done in my life, it's something God brought to us. I didn't see it coming. And over the course of 35 years, there are so many hills and valleys. But it's Psalm 23. He's always with us. And I remember moments, significant moments. I see the growth that God has done. I remember reconciling moments. We've seen God do things that to me, it's unimaginable. So I feel like God just brought stuff along all the way, and now we feel like we're part of this big spiritual family. It's a sheer joy is what it is. My parents grew up in irreligious families, pretty wild families actually, and they're the first Christians in that family tree. So I remember the change in my parents, and from about probably the age of 3 years old, my parents would take us to church, and this was radical in terms of the change in their life. So they were in on it all. So probably as a child, I'm sure that I prayed and asked Jesus into my heart, but it was my youth years in California. It became real. That's where Rick Blake and I became friends.
My 13th birthday, my mother had a surprise party scheduled for me, and she invited the wrong Dryden. She invited Jeff. Now, Jeff and I knew each other, but we didn't know each other that well, and Jeff assumed that he was one of many boys spending the night. Well, he was the only one. So the party was a big success for me. I turned 13. It was the first time I had girls at a party, and then Jeff spent the night. And we got to know each other, talked through the night, and from then on became fast friends. And then we both felt the call to go to Christian school, and we both ended up at Moody. And we continued our friendship through college then.
Moody's got chapel. It's a big chapel, and so the upstairs is kind of like a U. And I sat in the balcony usually, and saw this blur of, blonde action coming in. But she'd sit in the back, and like a lot of times in chapel, some people would be doing their homework or studying for the next thing. She wouldn't. So she caught my eye, and she would listen to what was said. And I'd see sometimes like she's getting down on her knees in the back row. I'm like, what is that? And so somebody had this idea, England Dan, John Ford Coleman in town, playing at the Ivanhoe Theater, said, we should all go. Nobody's dating anybody, so it's kind of like this thing you go around the room and say who you're going to ask and whatever. So I'm like, who am I going to ask? I had somebody in mind. So I'm like, well, I'm going to ask out Cindy Berg. My fear was she wouldn't know who I was. She didn't.
He called me out of the blue to invite me on a date, which he got pressured to do. But on the phone when he was asking me, kind of stuttering his way through it, I'm like, this guy is probably just kind of a little slow, or he's just not really that engaging.
I was so nervous. I just make an absolute idiot of myself on the phone. I think she's doing her homework. She's bored, but I was too nervous. I had to keep the conversation going, and who knows how that went.
And I thought, I'd love to see England Dan John Ford Coley, though. I'd say yes to anybody to go to that concert.
So I said, how about like our intramural basketball team is playing at such and such gym. You want to just meet there?
And then he invites me to come to a basketball game because you probably want to meet me before we go on, go somewhere. How about this?
She does not know who I am. I don't even know. Anyway, I don't even know she knew my name, even though I said it.
But I went to the ball game. I was late.
Of course, she's late. She's not there. I'm like warming up. She's not there. I'm like, we're getting nuts to her. I'm like,
He didn't think I was coming. And he's like, nuts to her.
And anyway, she showed up about halftime or sometime, So I knew she's there, but I'm like, I'm into the game, into what's going on, that's it.
And I'm sitting next to my friend, I'm like, Sherry, do you know a guy out there whose name is Jeff? Because I didn't know his last name. And she pointed out to Jeff, who was one of the good players. I'm like, well, no, can't be him. So I'm looking on the bench. Game over. He runs up to me, all sweaty. I got to get a drink, okay? I'm like, it was him. I'm like,
now it's our first real conversation. And so I think there's 2 games after us. We just sat and talked. As I got to know her, there's a lot of things inside there.
I was a hot mess, is what I call it. But what did God do? He had me meet Jeff. And God powerfully used that love and that staying love throughout my whole life.
I had no idea what I needed. I had no idea. God knew what I needed.
2 hearts run free. We're never looking back. This love was made to last.
Back 35 years ago, our church was recognizing that we needed to grow, we needed to expand our youth presence, and we really felt that a youth pastor was the right thing. And I was one of the people that was looking around trying to figure out what to do, and I knew that Jeff was doing Youth for Christ work.
So originally I said I couldn't marry a youth pastor, right? Then God made him open to missions, and then we were going to go be missionaries in a group that would go where they're invited, small group. They would give it all they got until the little church was established. So what happened to us is we were going to go on that path. And then I got pregnant right away. So that took it off the table. Then Jeff has this conversation with a friend of his that says, Dryden, you got to see what's going on in Youth for Christ, this great ministry. I know you love youth. So that's how we ended up in youth ministry for 5 years. Then that fell apart. And Jeff got a job so that he could take care of his family. And we called it it was like a horse that's out to pasture, like a racehorse that was out to pasture. In the midst of that, and feeling that longing to still be engaged in ministry with kids, we got the call from Sawyer.
And it was dynamic. I remember how quickly Jeff he picked a couple of guys and said, hey, we got to have student leaders, and he really focused on those young people and started in a smaller group with them and started really having them have a hunger for the Lord. And that grew, and it wasn't long, and we were bringing busloads of kids off to retreats, and it was quite exciting.
When Jeff came in '88, all of a sudden it became more active in terms of youth.
I remember Jeff had tons of energy, and Cindy was very sweet and engaging, and she told me she thought we were kindred spirits, and I was kind of intrigued by that. And Jeff was very visionary. He presented to the church things I had never heard about. I had never realized that a youth group could be such an important part of somebody's life.
The great thing was that he had all these relationships that started building, not just with people in my age, but also younger people. So that evolved, and that kind of set the stage for everything that started happening.
So I started attending youth group when I was a freshman in high school. And of course, Jeff was the youth pastor at the time. One of the first memories I had was going to a retreat, and I was sitting shotgun in the church van, and he was driving, and he just started asking me all these questions about my life, about who I was, about what I was about. And I remembered that uniquely because he was probably one of the first adults to ever take that kind of interest in me. And that was pretty unique. I was like, wow, this guy actually is interested in who I am and what I'm about and about my spiritual welfare even. And so that was pretty special. I remember that.
We're splashing the pond in that place, probably especially me. But we started the first contemporary service, what we called Wellspring. That was Butch Davis and I were kind of leading that. Our pastor liked the idea, Dave Moorhead, and honestly, I could not believe he would have confidence to put something in my hands. But that's became the beginnings of my ministry and music at the church.
Jeff is brilliant at nurturing the type of people that you want to see become the leadership of your body, especially leadership over some really tough decisions that they're going to have to face.
I believe that he was always working to raise generational leadership, whether it was in internships or whether it was on short-term missions trips or whether it was a longer-term commitment to missions. It's been pretty profound.
There was a devout atheist from Las Vegas, I forget his name, but he was very critical of the evangelicals. If you guys believe what you say you do, then why aren't you out there telling the world? And I think that's a great criticism. So Jeff and Cindy just live that. It's on their heart. This is real, this life journey, and we need to share that good news. So he lives it out.
I think he has a passion for the lost. And I think it's because he realizes what's at stake. His love and passion for missions has influenced the church in a positive way, which meant it's not just a job, punching in and out, but now that means his whole family is involved.
My mom had always thought about missions. Even as a kid, she thought maybe she would be a missionary someday.
I mean, her heart was for missions. She really had a soft spot for people in need, where she recognized the Lord could do something there, and that's always been true.
Obviously, our story is full of missions because it's both of our hearts, right? And the Lord wanted us to have an impact in Romania.
I didn't want to go, but it changed my whole worldview. And I think there's so many things people can teach you, but you can't learn unless you experience them. And it was an intense experience.
The first experiences I had very really with racism were in Romania. As a kid, you're seeing this and you're like, this is a human created like me. How is it that everyone treats them like they're trash, like they're nothing? So that had a profound shaping effect on I guess my understanding and desire to see justice. And I think that's how we were raised. We were raised with a lot of compassion for the world.
We went there as a youth group my senior year and participated in ministry there. And him wanting the whole church to be involved in that whole process as well. And I think that's one of the gifts that Jeff has. It's not just him thinking, oh, I'm doing this on myself, but this is something that we can all be enfolded into in some way. And I think that was, at least for myself, very formative.
Just seeing how God used us living in a place to affect just the people around us, And I think he used, it wasn't just my parents, it was our friendships. It's just very meaningful, because to see the gospel doing something in people is just so exciting. That's what it's meant to do, right? It's not meant to just be this message of words that just kind of stays in our heads.
As we look forward to what's going to happen, it's just a continuation. But I got to watch Jeff working with pastors in Central Asia and watching his heart differently there and his impact differently, and recognize the high value that brings that we just do not understand here in Michigan or in the United States.
Central Asia is a call. Will we go there? Their eyes are so lit up. They'll go all into the night in terms of when we're trying to study that goes on. And they take it the guy's dreaming of other places that are harder to get into than his place. They're asking for us to do this. I just watching that unfold in the last years has been, it's been worshipful. But the priority is Cindy and family, and we're part of the church.
They're never going to be done with ministry, but it seems to me like the focus is shifting towards ministering to family, and I'm really excited for that because loving your family is a really powerful thing, and they've done that super well.
As a child, you, I think, learn a lot about God from the way you're loved and cared for, and I think that's something my parents did really well.
As I've been reflecting on his retirement, it was surprising to me to think about my whole growing up. And as a pastor's kid, I know so many pastor's kids who have not continued to follow Jesus, and I think a lot of it has to do with some of the messages they receive that maybe aren't from God or aren't from Jesus. And I just feel so grateful that I always felt loved, I always felt accepted, and I was not perfect. Your parents have a unique role, and mine set me up, gave me that foundation. Without a foundation, it crumbles, and they gave me that foundation. That's made me who I am. And I'm so grateful for that.
The way that they have parented me in my youth and adulthood, and then also the way that they have led this church from the pulpit, from the piano, whether it was vacation, everyday life in Sawyer, living abroad, just throughout all of life, it was just them, mom and dad, again, life exposed, but it was always pointing us kids towards Christ. That's like the one nugget of no matter what, you can go through all the different seasons and whatnot, but that's what I always remember. And to this day, that's true. That's just been the way they do it. It's not a performance on Sunday. It's this is Jeff and Cindy's life. And so in this next season, family has been something they've talked about a lot as they anticipate this transition. And all the things that I love about them as parents growing up, I'm excited for my kids to experience that in their grandparents.
One really special thing my parents gave to us kids is their love for each other. And they just adore each other. They love each other. Yeah, I never, ever doubted my parents' love for each other. And I think that gives a kid a lot of security, and not a lot of kids get that. And that's something that I think mattered a lot to us. So.
I feel like they gave room for us discovering God in our way. You know what I mean? Knowing that God's the one that's going to come meet us. He's going to come into our story. And I think that really preserved my faith and my experience of God.
That idea of them living out their faith, I've never seen them break from that. And, I've been on a faith journey. And so, to have a father-in-law that you can go and approach and say, can you help me? And yeah, just kind of hurt with you but also be able to walk you through and follow up and do those things is really important.
They have a fast-paced life. They're full. They're community-driven, they're family-driven, they're people-driven, but they have not stopped pursuing each other. And they know that the best of them, the best grandparent or mom or dad or whatever that is going to come out when they're connected. So I think they have just a strong sense of that awareness in each other. When it's off, when it needs to be mended, when they need connection, you're going to see them pursuing that. And to see it up close has been encouraging to me.
It's just been such a joy to be a daughter-in-law in their family and to be part of the family. And I think all of us in-laws feel the same way. And it's fun to be an outsider looking in, but it's also very humbling to be let into a family that they took years to create. It took sacrifice, it took intentionality, it took hard conversations. And now as in-laws, we get to reap the benefits of being married to their spouses who are wonderful and kind and selfless, but also to be brought into a family setting where we're always loved, we're always hugged, there's always space for us. They've really made space for all of us, and they've walked with us as their own.
I think Mom has really set us up for a heart of worship. I think I learned to worship just being around her. So that's huge. And I think Dad, yeah, just like his priorities and just like keeping God first and family, a big value is family. I think that's something that we'll always have. And like, how are you spending your time and money and like keeping God first, and in that, I think that's something that they've passed on. Like they've definitely sacrificed time and money willingly, and been uncomfortable for what God is doing, and I think that's something that's going to live on in their legacy.
They've given their lives for people, which is so good. Like, that's Jesus. Jesus gave his life for people, gave his literal life for people. But I'm excited for them to come into a season of just getting to receive from the Father. And I think that's already happening. Like, for my mom even, like, the past year or so, God has just done so much in her heart to like set her free from things that have been really hard for a long time, because she just hasn't had to look at herself. Like, she's been able to just look at other people and give to other people, but now it's like distractions are falling away, and now it's just her and God, and like that's where he wants us to be.
As a child, I don't think I was seen or known in my family. And my kids are going to be seen. They're going to be known. They're going to have a voice. They're going to be respected. And I will not hold something over their head of what they should be like. I always affirmed that they were individuals and affirm them in whatever it was that they loved. But we had a part in raising 6 beautiful human beings. And when I think of our kids, I'm just so incredibly grateful.
We're blown away by it. We know this is rare, and we know it's not because of us.
They're very family-oriented, but by family, I don't just mean their kids. They're family-oriented because the church is their family. It is their family. Cindy will say, "This is my family." She'll get up before she plays music and says to the congregation, "Good morning, family." This is their family.
Pastors hear everybody's problems. They are criticized unfairly, but you have to have a certain kind of strength, a resolve, a love for people who can be difficult. You have to be able to weather some storms, and you have to have a passion for seeing growth in your congregation. And I have seen people burn out, and he never has.
The Lord has used Jeff and Cindy uniquely, following the Lord, digging into the Bible, being missionally minded, being community minded, being future minded. I think that has touched this church uniquely in 35 years, and it won't go away quickly. And it was special that it was here. I'm glad the Lord chose to let that be here.
Over time, seeing where we started with a very conservative, kind of legalistic situation, fast forward to a people that move towards each other, that are aware of need and engage in the things that are needed. They engage in the mess of our lives. We've grown in grace. We've grown in mercy and love. And praise God, I think what characterizes our body, I think people see Jesus and experience him. That is the most gratifying thing that I can think of.
I love our church. I love seeing how our people serve. And over the course of 35 years, watching that is sheer joy. I mean, you see it. And no one pretends to think that's because of me. You're some part of that. God joined us together. So I really think of it as the body of Christ. I have this role here, all these people, and it's all this together, and we've watched it happen. Significant conversations together, tears, brokenheartedness together, praying together. You stay in one church that long, it's amazing. But I think I've probably said this a lot lately. The trick is keeping our eyes on Jesus. And that's the deal. Because as much as I love our church, there have been times I've been hurt. And if I'm looking at the hurt and not at him, I will miss it. I think that's the deal. I really do. I think that's the deal.